Hi everyone, Wasim Parkar back with you to talk about Wimbledon. Of course, the focus of this video is the last singles match of this year's championship, which is the men's final. Now, before I get into that, I must apologize due to some constraints. I wasn't able to do a preview for the women's final, but what I do promise is after the championships conclude on Sunday, I plan to release two videos, one reflecting on the championship on the women's singles side and another reflecting on the championship on the men's singles side. So, Roger Federer versus Marin Cilic. This is quite an exciting final, not the dream top four final that most fans wanted, most fans were looking forward to. But nonetheless, this is a very intriguing matchup. Roger Federer leads the head to head 6-1, which would make him the considerable favorite. But I think we have to apply a caveat over here and sort of separate the first four meetings that Roger Federer had with Marin Cilic, which he won very convincingly, and then take into context the last three meetings, which Federer leads 2-1. Now, Marin Cilic's win, that one was obviously a quite famous one when he beat Roger Federer at the US Open semifinals 6-3, 6-4, 6-4. It was a very comprehensive win. And in some ways, the circumstances leading to that match are similar to this match because Novak Djokovic actually lost to Kei Nishikori in the first semifinal. So people were thinking, hey, Roger Federer is going to get another Grand Slam over here. All he has to do is beat Cilic and beat Nishikori. And I think the fact that Federer didn't have time to digest Djokovic's shock loss at that time meant that he sort of put pressure on himself. So almost like when you're an overwhelming favorite to such an extent, you put a different sort of pressure on yourself. And I don't think Federer was able to cope with it while Cilic played very freely. But even the match that Federer won before the US Open, they actually played a tight three-setter in Montreal, which Federer won 7-6, 6-7, 6-4. The margins were very thin. And then last year's memorable quarterfinal where Federer came from 2 sets down to win in 5 sets, saved 3 match points in the 4th set against Cilic. So everything would indicate that this match is quite close, and despite Federer being the favorite, we really can't write Cilic off. Now, the biggest caveat is most people are saying they haven't seen Roger Federer play tennis to such a high standard in a very long time. As we have seen in 2017, he's already won 4 titles. He did the Sunshine Double, winning Indian Wells and Miami at the end of the US hardcourt season, the first stage. And then, of course, he won in Halle 2 weeks ago, 9th title in Halle, and the most memorable of all, that sublime win at the Australian Open, where he beat 5 seeds on the way to winning his 18th Grand Slam final. He's playing some spectacular tennis. Now, was his tennis up to that spectacular standard in the semi-final against Thomas Berdych? I would argue that actually it wasn't, and at many times Federer felt tight, and I actually think that maybe it's a good thing that Federer had that tight match already and that's out of his system, because I think a lot of the tightness was again down to the fact that he is so obviously the favorite with Djokovic, Murray, and Nadal now all out. So I think that certainly played some part. Expectations played some part. And Federer, for all his sublime genius, even in his best years when he was winning 3 Grand Slams in a year as a matter of course, I think mentality has always been his slight Achilles heel, if you were to consider one weakness when we judge his career historically. So the fact that he had that pressure, the fact that he wasn't at his best and he was still able to see out Berdych, I think eventually that's a good sign. It's a good thing that came out of his system, and I think his mindset for the final will be slightly different. Now, folks, it would be a huge injustice if I talked about this final purely in Roger Federer's terms, because as I've said in some of my previous videos, if there's been one player who's had a smashing grass court season, it has in fact been Marin Cilic. You know, he made the finals at Rosmalen, the finals at Queens, lost both those matches only on tie breaks, so he's very unfortunate. Maybe should have won both titles. And at Wimbledon, here he played some flawless tennis, and I repeat, I said this in a previous video, but I just want to mention the opponents once again. First round, Philip Kohlschreiber, very tricky player. He's upset many top 10 players at Grand Slams in the past. Second round, Florian Mayer, an excellent grass court player who's won 4 grass court titles in his career. By no means an easy opponent. Roberto Batista Agut was beaten 2-2-2. And then in the quarterfinals and semifinals, he got rid of opponents who he is clearly better than, but nonetheless opponents who knocked out Rafael Nadal, Andy Murray, of course, Andy Murray, the injury caveat aside. So he's playing some exceptional tennis, playing brilliantly. That being said, the fact that he needed 5 sets to beat a Gilles Muller, who himself was coming off a 4-hour marathon against Nadal, suggests that there's still that room for error. Like Cilic is not the kind of player who's going to be in the zone non-stop. There'll always be an opportunity for his opponent, regardless of their quality, because mentally, despite winning the 2014 US Open, he doesn't have that habit of winning, that winning consistency that separates the top 4 from the rest. Then again in the semi-final, his win against Sam Querrey in 4 sets, very impressive. His serve was firing, forehand, backhand, everything was firing. But again, he lost the first set against Querrey. This was a Sam Querrey who was coming to the match after 3 consecutive 5-setters. And then in the 4th set, he showed remarkable resilience, it must be said, because he was a breakdown and it looked for all intents and purposes that match was also going to go to 5 sets. So there is some vulnerability, but I don't want to paint that necessarily in a negative picture, because I also feel he's shown his resilience. And compared to past years, Cilic has shown his ability to find a solution. In the match against Muller, there was some ridiculous stat where he lost 37 consecutive points on the ad court when Muller was serving, but yet he then started to find a solution. He started returning better. Against Sam Querrey, the same sort of thing. He wasn't able to get a read on Querrey's serve, but then once he did get a read in the 3rd set, he started dominating on return games, and he out-aced both Muller and Querrey, who in many ways are actually bigger servers than Cilic. So that shows that he's thinking during the match, he's coming up with solutions. So considering everything that I've said, of course, on a grass court, Federer's got the better game. He's got the variety. It's not just about power and just playing aggressive. In fact, I would argue that if Federer decides to play a game toe-to-toe with Cilic, I think Cilic actually can win. For both players, ironically, I think this match comes down to what happens between the years, in all honesty. If Federer is focused, mentally strong, then you would argue that it's almost a no contest, like not a 6-2, 6-2 sort of thing, but maybe a couple of tie breaks and one close set. But if Federer is even a little inconsistent and he provides Cilic with an opportunity, then Cilic is, of course, a very dangerous opponent. Cilic, of course, on the other hand, will also be looking to make a statement. The last 2 years at Wimbledon, he's lost 5-set quarterfinals to Federer and Djokovic. And at one point in both matches, you could argue have said that Cilic was a better player and should have won those matches. So is he finally going to get over that hump in this year's Wimbledon final? We'll have to see. So for him also, it's in between the years. The potential is for this to be a very good final. I expect it to be decided on very thin margins, regardless of the number of sets played. What I'm hoping for is that neither player freezes mentally, and we get to see both players playing at their best level. And if that happens, I would back Federer to win this. So Federer is my favorite for this final, but I'm going for a very conservative 57-43. 57-43. Yeah, it might seem maybe I'm playing it safe because Federer, of course, hasn't lost a set. But there's something in Cilic's mental makeup which makes him a little bit more of a threat than opponents like Dimitrov, Berdych, and Raonic. So let's see how this plays out. I'm hoping we get to watch a tremendous final. I'm hoping we get to see lots of clean hitting, not too many unforced errors, and a final that all of us will remember fondly. So as I promised, and I am going to live up to my promise, I'll see you guys back with 2 review videos reflecting on the whole of Wimbledon. One on the women's side and another on the men's side. This is Wasim Parkar signing out for today.